Greetings, I'm Steve Eckert. On behalf of all of us at Reed Ministries, we want to take a few minutes to express our gratitude for the continued support of our Ukraine Relief Fund and to update you on what our organization is doing in the lives of our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. Here at Reed Ministries, good theological resources are our passion. Discipleship resources and humanitarian aid are vital to the ongoing care for Ukraine's displaced and hurting people. You may be wondering what difference these discipleship and humanitarian resources are making, and we are pleased to share that church services in our partner cities have doubled. Worship spaces are overflowing, and many new brothers and sisters are now baptized believers. God is moving and working among the people displaced by this vicious war. Just a few months after the war began, God's Design Church in Kyiv had grown so much they did not have room for their growing congregation. God's Design learned of an empty underground nightclub that would meet the need for increased space. We know that God blesses us in ways that exceed our expectations. As Genesis 50:20 reminds us, you intended it to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. An overcrowded church is a blessing. An abandoned nightclub is a blessing. God's Design has recently set a goal to purchase this underground nightclub and move in permanently. This is just one example of many redemptive stories that are being lived out right now in Ukraine. As we continue to receive your donations to our Ukraine Relief Fund, we will be able to offer financial aid to help our partners reach their God-ordained goals.
The Kremenchuk Evangelical Seminary has a branch at Light of the Gospel Church in Balakleya. Beginning in early 2020, a group of about 75 students started their 3-year course of study. Just 2 sessions remained when the Russian invasion turned their lives upside down. Most of the church families and students evacuated. The rest took shelter in the church building. Shortly after the invasion, Balakleya was captured and occupied. And soon the Russian invaders took control of the church premises. They looted the building and destroyed the seminary library. 6 months later, when the city was liberated, life at Light of the Gospel Church began to resume. Services began, and the church community began to provide food and clothing and home repairs to their neighbors. This outpouring of God's love touched many lives, and many began attending church services. Believers in Balakleya have experienced firsthand the promises of God found in Isaiah 43. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. This past January, the staff of Kremenchuk Seminary visited Balakleya and rejoiced at a house of prayer packed with people. Reed Ministries, in partnership with KES, has the opportunity to provide financial assistance to this church and their pastor so that humanitarian and spiritual aid can continue in their city of Balakleya. It's our prayer that the seminary will once again be filled in the days ahead. Through the 6-month occupation, about 40 students persevered through their final courses while the war raged around them. Most of these students lost homes and possessions, but they faithfully finished their studies and are serving the Lord. Your donations to our Ukraine Relief Fund will help Reed, in partnership with Kremenchuk Seminary, repair the damage done to the library, replace many of the lost resources, and gift each graduate with a brand new commentary when they graduate here in mid-May.
We refer to our Ukrainian partners as first responders. They are the ones that, at the onset of the invasion, opened their doors to receive the desperate people in search of safety from the enemy. Our first responders answered the call on their lives and shared Christ's love and the gospel while physically sustaining hundreds daily. Pastor Vova and his wife Oksana serve in the small town of Yarmolinsky in western Ukraine. When the war began, they opened their doors and accepted hundreds of internally displaced people who came to them seeking physical and spiritual aid. On the second night of the war, Pastor Vova and Oksana served 108 adults and children from a boarding school with limited resources. They continue to stretch their supplies to provide food and heat and shelter to their guests and transportation to get refugees to safety further west. Needless to say, after months of this work, this pastor and his wife were physically exhausted and emotionally depleted. Last summer, we encouraged all our first responders to consider their mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health. We offered to help them financially so they could schedule some time away from the exhausting, overwhelming work of directing a relief ministry in hopes they would experience this scriptural reminder in Psalm 23:3. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for His name's sake. June offered a time to take a break. For 5 days, Vova and Oksana enjoyed some rest and a change of scenery in the Slovakian mountains. Vova attended a pastor's conference that filled and refreshed his soul. Your donations to our Ukraine Relief Fund will allow Reed Ministries to walk alongside all other first responders just like Vova and Oksana as they seek to faithfully follow the encouragement of the scriptures to do good to all people, especially those who are part of the household of faith.
Imagine the learning curve our partners experienced as they quickly pivoted from shepherding churches and seminaries to managing refugee centers. Each of these partners has answered the call on their lives to stay and serve. Our colleagues have learned to cope, get creative, and become more efficient in providing for their communities, not on their own, but in the strength of the Lord. Their united testimony echoes that found in Exodus 15. The Lord is my strength and my song, and He has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise Him, my Father's God, and I will exalt Him.
Financial resources are needed for these resource centers to continue to thrive. We would ask you to support Reed Ministries as we continue God's work in and through the people of Ukraine. It's through your faithful prayer and financial support that Reed can empower our brothers and sisters to carry the love of Christ into the country of Ukraine. Thank you for being with us as we do all the Lord entrusts us to do.